The following presentation was given at the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Tupelo in Tupelo, Mississippi. All are welcome to join us on Sundays at 11 a.m. at 1301 Marshall Street in Tupelo.
One of my favorite philosophers as a kid even was Khalil Gibran, a Lebanese mystic. I think he was probably Maronite Christian, if I remember. Anyway, my mother was a reader of his work, and The Prophet is a book to start with if you don't know of him. The words today are from My Soul Preached to Me, which is contained in a book titled Thoughts and Meditations. My soul preached to me and taught me to love that which the people abhor, and befriend him whom they revile. My soul showed me that love provides itself not only in the one who loves, but also in the beloved. Ere my soul preached to me, love was in my heart as a tiny thread fastened between two pegs. But now, love has become a halo whose beginning is its end, and whose end is its beginning. It surrounds every being and extends slowly to embrace all that shall be. The dog within us. You know, you rightfully suspected that was maybe a tribute to the dyslexic, and I did think about that a little bit. But what I really wanted that dog to be is to remind you that people, us wise, upright apes, are animals. You know, we belong to the same biological classification as every other animal. And while our brains make us think we're much, much better, and we are able to read and pass things along in books instead of hard knocks all the time, we still are animals. And for those of you who did high school biology or even biology 101 in college, you remember the taxonomic classification system, where kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species got you right down into the very beginnings of who and what you were talking about. Well, since I did that, and by the way, there's some sort of phrase you can remember to keep that order in your mind. If you ever, I just memorized the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. It was a lot easier. Anyway, we're first of all eukaryotes. That's multi-celled critters. And then we're in the animal kingdom. You can do these in Latin if you like. Phylum, we're chordata. That means we have a spinal cord, a central nervous system. We're subphylum vertebrata, which means we got hard bones around that central cord. We're tetrapoda, which means four-limbed. I thought poda was feet, like podiatrists and stuff, but it really means four limbs. And we're primates. That's the big ape class of folks. We're in the family Homidae, which is humans, and we're Homo sapiens. That's the genus and species. Our species specific is sapiens again. So we're thinking upright, mostly hairless apes of the animal kingdom with spinal cords and all that good stuff. Animals we are. At times, you know, we can be very gentle, loving, compassionate animals, but within us are other forms of animal. While Gwen was doing her presentation last Sunday, we were talking about the character of human behavior, and we pretty well agreed that within every one of us, and I owe this to Betty, the way she captured it in that discussion, was within every one of us, we are the best of things, and we can be the worst of things. There is that potential in each of us. Now, the last biological thing I'm going to want to talk about here is the business that's characterized with the terrible phrase that everybody has to memorize, but nobody really knows what the hell it means. It's ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. And what that really means is that as an animal matures, from the time that it's a fertilized egg up through its full being, its embryo goes through a stage of development that seems to track right along with our evolution from a one-celled animal up through the fish and a reptile and finally into the upright, ape, speaking, thinking, wise animal that we are. And our brains reflect that. The brain stem and that very first layer of brain that lies over where your spinal cord comes up is very akin to reptiles, fish and reptile kinds of thinking and behavior. If there's a mean streak in you, it's a knot about this big in the very center and base of your skull, and it can make you the meanest goddamn thing in the world. It is a place you go when you're threatened. It is a place that comes out when you are really, really killing angry. It's not a pretty place to go. It's certainly not a place we want to try to stay, but it can help us understand why some people can do the things that they do. Seems like every week there's another incident of somebody going on a killing spree. And what is the latest count from Midland, Odessa? 10 or 20 or 30 injured and many killed? That's a reptile brain leaking out and overriding the more human parts of us. As we evolved up from whatever that little reptilian thing was and into the primates, we developed more and more sophisticated layers of brain. And our outer brain, the cerebral cortex, that lumpy corduroid kind of organ that you see when folks take holes into the skull so you can see it. That's where our intellect is. That's where our humanness is. And up at the very front is where our frontal lobes and our in-depth kind of associations, calculations, the more sophisticated, the kinds of things that really define us as humans happen there in the front of your brain. And generally this outer layer overlies that reptile animal, and we tend to want to behave with each other in ways that we would call compassion and love. And it's where we do the altruistic things, where you will give up something just because someone else needs it. That's not a natural act. I mean, there's very, very few animals do that except mothers with their offspring. Their offspring, not somebody else's offspring, but theirs. They will be altruistic. But in general, even humans won't give up stuff just because somebody else needs it. In fact, the more we think about it, the more we'll do it if it doesn't cost us very much. So there's still this self-preservation instinct, and we need that. Otherwise, we'd God, who would even go through being a teenager if we didn't have this self-preservation instinct? We'd be a very small problem on the face of the earth. But let's talk about you, because I don't want to do all the talking on this. I want this to be a discussion. And I want you to share with me some of your thoughts and what I would do kinds of things in some situations that I've kind of outlined. Now, these situations, it's kind of like reading a novel. The first thing you need to do is suspend any disbelief you might have that this is possible. So the first one that I'd like you to think about, let's say that by some magic time-traveling way, you found yourself in a yurt, that's a hut, in Mongolia, generally the western part of Mongolia, and you were there with a mother giving birth to a son. That son is going to be named Attila, and the tribe he's a member of are the Huns. Now, if you don't remember your history lessons, Attila the Hun, that may have been Freudian. Attila the Hun was the sacker of Rome, the destroyer of the Roman Empire, or raging terror of Europe. In other words, he killed hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, subjected them to slavery. His tribe raped and pillaged, and in comparison, the Vikings looked civilized. But you're here in the yurt where he was born, and his mother's having a little difficulty. And what she needs is somebody to help her get this baby into the world. If somebody doesn't help her, this baby's not going to be born alive. What do? You're there. You know what you know today. You have the skills you have today. What would you do? She needs help. Are you going to help her? What you going to do? Now this time, somewhere in the 1960s, maybe 50s, you're living in Africa, somewhere in what used to be the Belgian Congo, or some part of the sub-Saharan jungly, which isn't all really jungle, rainforesty part of the African continent. And you're with the very first person, the very first human to be infected with and carrying HIV. The two of you are scaling a cliff. Why? I don't know. You're just scaling this cliff together. Your mutual survival is you're in each other's hands as you go up this cliff, because one of you belays the other. It's that kind of a tough professional grade climb. You know that this person is the first HIV carrier, and you know the consequences of all of that. You're at a point on this cliff where you're doing the belay, you're the anchor, and the HIV carrier slips. And what do? You can let go of the rope, and he's going to fall far enough down to where it's surely going to kill him. Or you can hang on, put yourself at risk as well, because the fall may well pull you off the cliff too. And so what do? Let me give you another situation, if that hasn't been enough of a quandary for you. You and Mother Teresa, the dear sainted lady, is now in her resting place, but you're with her at a time of her life. She's already pretty famous. She's running the sisterhood, when they're something of charity. What is the name of it?
Sisters of Mercy.
Sisters of Mercy. Anyway, you're walking down this street in Calcutta, and all of a sudden, a crazy person leaps out of an alley with a knife and clearly is aiming to attack Mother Teresa. Now, you can stop that, but it's going to cost you your life. If you do nothing, Mother Teresa's going to die. If you get engaged and stop this person, Mother Teresa's going to live, but you're going to die. What do you do about that? I have one last thing for you to think about. This one's kind of good because you somehow got really, really lucky, and not with Mississippi's lottery, but with a ticket you bought in Tennessee, and you won one of the pretty big lotto prizes. Whatever pot boy, the lucky pot, or whatever the big lottery thing is. And turns out the prize, you opted to take cash rather than dribble it out over 20 or 30 years. But the prize is something like $300 million after taxes. So you got $300 million after taxes. You even paid Mississippi and still have $300 million. And your lawyer says, you know, we can take some of that money and set up a trust fund to provide a scholarship to some student, full tuition, full room and board, full everything, even pay the kid $100 a month to buy pot and whatever they want. You get to set up this thing that's only going to cost you $15 million. So you'll only then have 270 million, 209, whatever. You got a gob of money left. But the thing is, what are you going to set that scholarship up for? And it has to result in a professional degree. None of this liberal arts crap like government and politics or my God, another English literature master's degree. It got to be something professional. Now, the question is, what do you want that to be? I'm impressed, actually, with the quality of your short notice kinds of thinking. You all are pretty good people. You know that? Of course you do. I mean, that's what UUs are. We're pretty good folks. We try to be pretty good folks. And you know why we're trying to do that? It's because that's who we are. You know, it's not because we're afraid to go to hell, and it's not because we want to live on milk and honey or whatever, and burn our feet on streets of gold. It's because we're just pretty good people. I have a short quote here from, I think it's short, unless I picked the wrong one. Oh, this is pretty good. Thomas Merton, and that's sneaky because this is really from a book called The Way of Chuang Tzu, which he's another one of those Oriental philosophers, kind of post-Tao comments about the Tao from time to time. But anyway, Thomas Merton is a good source if you're looking for, what should I say? I don't mean non-Christian, but more modern attitudes towards spirituality, or what have become modern. Thomas is probably long dead. But let me read you this selection from Chuang Tzu. In my end is my beginning. In the beginning of beginnings was void of void, the nameless. Now that's very Tao. And in the nameless was the One, without body, without form. This One, this being in whom all find power to exist, is the living. From the living comes the formless, the undivided. From the act of this formless come the existence, each according to its inner principle. This is form. Here body embraces and cherishes spirit. The two work together as one, blending and manifesting their characters. And this is nature.
Thanks for listening to the UUC of Tupelo's podcast. You can find us at uuctupeloms.org, on Facebook by searching for UUC Tupelo, or contact us by email at uuctupelocom@gmail.com. That's uuctupelocom@gmail.com. The UUC of Tupelo is a welcoming congregation who accept all people, regardless of creed, color, national origin, gender, or gender identity. We hope you have enjoyed this podcast, and as you head on your way, go in peace, believe in peace, create peace.